Would members of the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee please report to Committee Room 1 for quorum?
We're going to get started because we now have quorum. That's what we're just waiting for quorum. So I think we're going to get started with our next speaker. Our next speaker is Stacy. Is Stacy in the room? Okay, welcome, Stacy. So Stacy, make sure your mic's on in front of you because we're just starting again after lunch. And if you could keep your comments to 3 minutes, that would be terrific. And there may be questions for you after. Thank you.
Thank you. Good day, everyone. Dear councillors, Madam Speaker, my name is Stacy Korjanovic, and I am a resident of 233 Beecroft Road. So I'm actually a direct stakeholder in what's about to happen either on Yonge Street or on Beecroft. I would like to first let you know about my personal observation about what's going on today. So I've been looking at the list of people who have been speaking or are about to speak, and this is a free preview of what's happening usually at the so-called public consultations when there are not that many actual residents of Willowdale, but the majority of the so-called attendants constitute those who belong to special interest groups such as Cycle Toronto, Walk Toronto, David Suzuki Foundation, and many, many others. So I would like to give a bit of my own critique and my own input about what I see as a resident that would happen to Yonge Street if reimagining Yonge Street happens there the way it's proposed, of reducing the number of lanes from the existing 6 to 4, and then what could also happen to Beecroft, because I live there, I see it firsthand what's happening on Beecroft. So first of all, the biggest concern for many residents in our neighborhood is that there have been no sufficient or any studies whatsoever about the impact of on the time travel for the first responders. If the number of lanes is reduced from 6 to 4, how much longer would it be taking for the paramedics or police to arrive to the scene where they are needed? The second thing that many people in our area are concerned about is the fact that once the parking is eliminated on Yonge Street, many people will be unable to travel to their favorite restaurant, their beauty shop, or many, many different places on Yonge Street, which is going to, first of all, impact the businesses because the businesses will be losing their customers. And secondly, people who do have disabilities or who cannot walk far for whatever reason, that means that these people will not be able to enjoy things and activities that they usually do enjoy on Yonge Street. Thirdly, it's also going to just create more congestion because most of the traffic that we have on Yonge Street and on Beecroft for that matter, it's actually not coming just from the residents of Willowdale. It's coming from people who are commuting from up north and who need to get onto Highway 401 or to drive somewhere that the public transportation is not taking them to. Now, having addressed what would be the impact on Yonge Street, let me tell you a bit about what would happen with Beecroft. As of recently, we had pipes changed. So my question is, once once the Beecroft proceeds, the project of Beecroft proceeds, what's going to happen to the new lining of pipes that was just done there? Secondly, as a resident of Beecroft, what I'm personally concerned about is that once the construction starts, it's going to take years. This is unfortunately how very often things do happen in Toronto, and I will be inhaling the dust for many, many months to come, aside from what I'm already inhaling, given all of the residential construction that is happening in my area.
Okay, I think I'm going to have to ask you to wrap up, and I'm sure there's a question for you. Is there a question for her? Yeah. Okay, so maybe you can use that as your opportunity.
Yeah, well, I know she wants to say more, and I guess my question is, what more do you have to say? And would you want this committee to hold off until after the election? I haven't heard one resident in that area say that they want this decision made today.
Definitely not.
Or would you rather allow the voters to decide on whether or not Councillor Fillion should be bringing this thing forward as quick as he is?
I believe that Canada is a democratic society, and things have to be decided democratically, especially on such matters that will implicate the lives of average residents of the City of Toronto.
Okay, that's it. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is, I'm just trying to find the name here, Blake Jacobs. Blake, are you here? Okay, there you are. Welcome, Blake. So you have 3 minutes, Blake, and if you can just ensure that the microphone's on in front of you.
Test. I guess so.
Great.
Thank you again for the opportunity to address this committee, and hopefully I'll be a little less jumbled and cluttered than last time. I'm a 52-year resident of 112 Betty Ann Drive, so I have plenty of knowledge of the area. There's this giant false equivalence between bikers, cyclists, and pedestrians, and cars. When it's 100 to 1 to a half, that's not equivalence. They don't deserve equal treatment. The flawed study, I'm a PhD in finance and has done a lot of back testing. I want to know how many of these numbers from these studies were done in 2007 and how they looked 10 years down the road. Because I saw all kinds of rosy scenarios from this study, and it reminded me of the lottery question. And so many people talk about giving all kinds of money to charity if they win a lottery, and it ends up not happening. There was a question on there, would you cycle to work if work was 5 kilometers away? And it was like 80% said yes. I want to know how many people in the last 10 years have actually done that. I have a major problem. This study also was only looked at north-south traffic, nothing east-west. We don't live in a one-dimensional world. And the study also didn't look at Willowdale or Senlac Road, and I was told by one of the city transportation people that someone would get back to me. They didn't. But a real problem with the east-west issues is there are only 2 places where you can get off the ring roads to go either west of Beecroft or east of Dorset, and those are all 1 lane. So you are going to end up with huge backlogs and a whole bunch of traffic being forced into the side streets. And also, traffic from south of Shepherd on Beecroft going south to Yonge Street at lunchtime is backed up about 1/8 of a mile, and the same going north about 1/8 of a mile from Finch, headed towards Hendon. And because you have basically 4 sets of streetlights all within 100 yards of each other, and you have the parking on the road. And if indeed Yonge Street is shrunk, the parking off Beecroft is going to have to disappear, or if it stays, it's just going to make Beecroft and Dorset 1-lane roads. Parking on Beecroft is allowed during the day, almost the entire stretch, definitely from Churchill all the way to Shepherd. Remember also, Beecroft has a 40-kilometer speed limit, which really doesn't help emergency vehicles or anyone else trying to get from A to B. you can think of this as a voluntary construction detour. You know, no one driving from Steeles and Yonge wants to get a detour, you know, through scenic Beecroft. It's a construction delay. It's nothing else. And who signs up for that? You know, it's as unwanted as an unwanted season like winter. You know, in the report they talked about James Walk and you know, and Willowdale West, which has 25 members, and James Walk had 35. Combined, that's not even an NFL roster on game day. And
Okay, I'm sorry, but we do have to accommodate our 17 other speakers. Is there any questions for our deputant?
Based on my attempt to try and get people to spend 5 minutes speaking and us taking it away from them, I think somebody should just give them the opportunity to finish out. What more do you have to say?
I was going to say, oh, sorry. Yeah. They're huge, oh, sorry, I got messed up there. Councillor Fillion, on his fireside chat with Willowdale West, talked about he really couldn't do much about traffic problems. He couldn't, you know, he wanted to give residents a neighborhood. That's his definition of a neighborhood. That's, who knows what yours is and what's mine, but that's his definition. And whether there are 4 lanes or 6 lanes along Yonge Street, it will be congested. Correct, Councillor Fillion? Those are your words, not mine. And Finch and Yonge and Shepherd and Yonge are on Mayor Tory's top 10 list of bad intersections. Why on earth would you want to make it worse? And finally, we all know former Mel Lastman and, you know, king of North York, just anyone who can name a building after himself says it all. Nobody knows North York better than Mel, and Mel says this is insane, and no one says it better.
Is there any other questions, Councillor Fillion?
Just a quick question. So the meeting you referred to that you attended, most people at that meeting, did they agree with the vision that I was presenting?
I read the notes from the Willowdale West fireside chat.
Oh, you weren't there?
I was not there.
Thank you.
But I'll say, Councillor Mamali, you talked about election. It basically should be a citywide referendum, since Yonge Street affects everyone in the city. It's not really an election for Councillor Fillion's or district only. You know, if Bathurst gets extra, would get extra traffic. Bayview would get extra traffic, which means Leslie gets extra traffic. Dufferin gets extra traffic. And you know, there's all kinds of great recreational cycling opportunities in the graveyard. York Cemetery essentially goes from Beecroft all the way to Bathurst, and it's scenic. I learned how to drive in there. And I don't know why Senlac, with 2 schools and the graveyard, a 40-kilometer speed limit, wasn't looked at all. And you can basically connect Clark and Yonge Street through Senlac, through Grant Brook, all the way to the crematorium and come out at the 401, and why Willowdale wasn't looked at. Willowdale goes continuous from from Shepherd all the way to past Steeles, without various detours. And the scope of that study it brought back all kinds of conclusions that they wanted brought back. As a statistician, it wasn't a fair survey, and even being the October 11th drop-in, which wasn't there was no option, none of the above. You were basically told, which of these great plans do you like? There was none of the above. And we were told by many condescending transportation people how great their plan was and how we weren't looking towards the future. Well, unless global warming brings the temperatures of Toronto up to Atlanta, Georgia, no one's going to be biking any distance in the middle of January. When it was -20 out a few nights ago, I was crazy enough to go for a 6-mile run. I didn't see anyone on a bicycle. And so it goes back to the false equivalence. One biker does not equal 1,000 or 10,000 cars. And I can guarantee when it was -20, I want to know how many people casually walked from Hendon to Points, just at a routine stroll. And I want to see the numbers, because it is a great case of false equivalence. Does anyone have any questions?
I don't think so. It looks like we're through. So thank you, Blake.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Our next speaker is Doug Ford. Doug, welcome back to City Hall.
Nice to be here, Madam Chair. And I want to address my former colleagues and my future colleagues as well. First of all, listening to all the speakers, very interesting. I like the name, Reimagine Yonge Street. You don't have to reimagine Yonge Street, you just have to go down King Street. You have to go over to Woodbine, you have to go over to Bloor, and that's what you can imagine after they decide, and hopefully you folks and the council don't decide to reduce 50% of the lanes from 6 lanes down to 4 lanes. It's concerning when I look at the numbers as well. $71 million. Those are staggering numbers. Those are staggering numbers when we saw what happened over the Christmas holidays with the homeless people. When you drive down the street and you see potholes all over the place that haven't been filled, I think we could reallocate that $71 million to other areas, a higher priority. And I'm not against bike lanes. Matter of fact, I'll remind some of my former colleagues that our administration put more money into bike lanes than any other administration has. We just believe that they shouldn't be on the main arterial roads. And I could just imagine the disaster that could happen that we see happening on King Street, happen on Yonge Street. I'm concerned about the lack of consultation that happened with the 150 businesses along that corridor, that they feel they haven't been informed at all. I hear there's been a lack of consultation with the residents. They seem to be upset. I do agree with Councillor Mamalidi that this should be left until the upcoming election and not go out there and have an upheaval of the whole community over a couple bike lanes. Now, my friends, remember, less than 1% ride bikes. And again, I'm not against bikes, as you might have seen the TVO show. I don't mind going out there and biking. Mind you, I don't bike every day, and I probably could use a little bit of biking by the looks of things down there. But again, I encourage the council to do the right thing. Wait until this election's over. Let the people decide. Let the people decide if they want Councillor Filion to be the representative or our current mayor, the king of congestion, to be re-elected or not be re-elected. But we live in a democratic society. Let them decide. And we're gonna make sure that this money here would be allocated, as I said, to more important things that the city hasn't been able to fund. I find it ironic. My time's up, Madam Chair. I'm playing by the rules here, but I'll take questions.
Okay, thank you very
How
much.
well behaved I am today?
Very well behaved.
That's very unusual.
Hopefully that's not about to change. Councillor Filion.
Doug, can you tell us what is your vision for downtown North York, for Yonge Street, North York Centre? When you look into the future, what picture do you see?
Well, Councillor Filion, one of the parts of the downtown North York is the subway there. I believe that should be extended to Don Mills and create the loop.
No, but just in that area.
Just in
what's
that
your
area.
vision? What do you see?
I have no problem with repaving the streets. I have no problem with fixing the sidewalks, beautifying the areas. My issue, Councillor Filion, is ripping up 2 lanes of traffic and putting the war on the car. Remember, Councillor Filion, 85% of the people still drive.
But when
you
you
can't
see
get rid of the car.
But do you just have a picture, like on your screen? Is it just things like a bike with an X through it, or do you have a
I don't have
picture of
any.
what you would like to see?
Councillor Filion, I have no X's through anything. The only X I have is getting rid of 50% of the lanes to turn them into bike lanes. I would even be open
to having bike lanes on Beecroft. I'm not against bike lanes, as we've proven over the years of putting in bike lanes. I'm just against bike lanes going down Bloor Street, destroying the businesses down there, destroying King Street, destroying Woodbine Avenue, and there's a whole agenda that some of the councillors, now not all the councillors are this way, but some of the councillors, they you know, it's systematic. It's just one after the other. King Street's next. I'm sorry, University's next. Queen Street's next. And you won't stop, Councillor Filion, until every single major artery is clogged. This city has never seen congestion ever in the history of Toronto like we have seen here. You can't move. I can fly from Chicago to Toronto in 57 minutes. I can't get from Etobicoke downtown in less than an hour. And the former Mayor Lastman, I was talking to him the other day, and he said the city staff have lost their minds. I don't agree with that statement because I think we have super smart city staff. One of the smartest city staff folks are sitting right over there. Sorry to point you out, John, but one of the smartest guys are right there. So do I agree with that statement? No. But do I agree with Mayor Lastman about this is the craziest idea I've heard? That I agree with.
Have you read the staff report?
I haven't read the full staff report, and Councillor Filion, I have actually. Well, here it is. I ran through a few pages of it, but I don't need to read a staff report. I've read more staff reports than I could shake a stick at. I don't need to read a staff report to see they're going to destroy Yonge Street. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out if you're taking 2 lanes of traffic out, you're reducing it down to 50%, what's going to happen. Well, you and I can maybe go have lunch over on King Street to support the restaurants that are going to be bankrupt because of these crazy ideas that yourself and some of your colleagues have come up with.
Always glad to have lunch, but I do have a few more questions. So, do you know what the delay is in the staff report? How much the delay will be to a driver as a result of the Transform Yonge change? Do you know what that number is in the staff report?
Councillor Filion, it's a no-brainer. You take out 2 lanes, you have 6 lanes, you reduce them down to 4. It's already the congestion. I go down Yonge Street 3-4 times a week by Yonge and 401. It's a nightmare getting from Finch down to the 401. I buy my cars up at Ford Steeles up there, and just getting through that area of traffic is a nightmare. Absolute nightmare. And again, Councillor Filion, it's not a knock against bicycle riders, even though they're less than 1% of the population. God bless them. Let's put bike lanes in secondary arterial roads. Next question.
Thank you. I think next was Councillor Mamalady, I believe.
So this city has been designed over the years for the car. Is that a stretch?
No, that's
this whole city's been designed for the car.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've got all of these so-called bike champions that want to turn our city into a third world country. Would you agree with me that putting the bike lanes in the middle of the road may not be the most attractive thing in the world?
Well, I don't think it's even attractive. The point is, Councillor Mamalady, our city has to get moving. We have to move forward. We have to make sure people get from point A to point B in a rapid fashion. And by taking 2 lanes of vehicle traffic out, it's a no-brainer. You don't have to do it like a Kaizen event to figure out that you're going to have traffic congestion.
You came in and heard some deputants, right?
Yes.
Were you here to hear anybody outside the community? Or were you here to hear a good chunk of the community because they're here today? Did you hear what they had to say? I
can just speak on people that I represent. I would never go in there with a major project that they say 71 million is going to balloon over to be 100, 150 million by the time it's done, because that's usually what happens down here. But I would never put an infrastructure project in my ward without consulting the whole community. Right. You can't have the backroom deals and the quiet little deals and all of a sudden, pop it onto the residents of the area that are going to be affected day in and day out, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Have you heard one constituent of Councillor Filion's agree on this project today?
I have not heard of one. Matter of fact, I was up there the other day speaking to business owners. They're furious. They're furious that there was a lack of transparency. They're furious that they haven't been consulted. And again, it's going to hurt their businesses like they hurt the people on Bloor, like they hurt the people on King Street.
Where are we going to get the $71 million?
And, oh, here comes the Sinclair disaster,
Where-
Councillor. How are you?
My time is being eaten up now by.
Okay, I'll hold your time
I apologize.
by the
Sorry.
disruption.
They're pulling out the bullpen now.
Yeah, the King of St. Clair's here. But
I apologize, Councillor. You were saying?
it's okay. You know, it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, where are we going to get the $71 million?
I'm not too sure. All I hear is, you know, from the mayor that he has no money, he has nothing, and we need money, but he's willing to spend a couple $2 billion on a poodle park, which is staggering. And
That's a good name, by the way. I wonder where that came from.
and again, I have no problem, Councillor Mammoliti, in putting in bike lanes, as you were part of the administration, and as my colleagues here saw, that we
Okay.
put more money into bike lanes than any other administration.
So today, I'm getting wind that there's going to be a motion to spend money on Beecroft. And again, the community hasn't had an opportunity to even talk about it in the election. But yet we're ready to spend millions and millions of dollars just like this, without any thought. I heard you say that you'd be open to streets like Beecroft. But should we be moving motions and spending this kind of money without talking to the community first in an election, which for me is really important here? Because I believe, and I'm not sure if you agree with this, I believe that if Councillor Fillion were to bring this in the election in October, he would lose the election.
Well, that's
Last
the reason.
question.
That is the reason he's trying to ram it through. It's pretty clear on that. But my heart breaks for the deputy that lives on Beecroft that hasn't been consulted. So with my comment saying it's not I wouldn't have an issue with that. That's after an election. You don't do anything with 6 months before an election without consulting your neighborhood. After consulting the neighborhood, if the neighborhood wants it and the community wants it, God bless them, put it in. But you can't ram this through right before an election, because I agree with what you're saying. Bring it to the people. We live in a democratic society, and they'll decide if they want Councillor Fillion representing them or they don't. And if Councillor Fillion gets elected, then he has the right.
Will you
to put
reverse
those
this
bike lanes-
No, that was your last
Will you
question.
reverse this position
That was your last question, the last
next
question.
administration?
We'll wait and see.
Okay.
We'll wait and
So,
see. But I'll tell you, we won't be reducing lanes of traffic. But
Okay,
Madam
we have
Chair,
another
thank you
question
very
for you.
much.
We have another question for you from Councillor Holiday.
Mr. Ford, thanks for coming. I want to ask you two questions that I asked a couple of the other speakers. First was 55,000 cars on Yonge Street. If council takes the decision to chop out 50% of the lanes, what do you think will happen to those 55,000 cars?
The same thing, and thank you, Councillor Halday. The same thing that's happening on King Street. They're going to go to the second arterial roads, but even worse in more of a residential suburban area like North York. They're going down the secondary roads where residents are living, where people are living, where kids are playing on the sidewalks and balls rolling on the streets, like a lot of kids, you know, playing out there. But it's not going to be great. It's not going to be healthy. All the traffic on these side routes, it's terrible. I saw a documentary the other day what they did in New Jersey, that they did the exact same thing, and they're rerouting people down these side streets, and there's traffic as far as you can see on these side streets. People that live in that area, Councillor Holiday, don't want that, as they wouldn't want it in your area or my area in Etobicoke.
So one of the other ways that I described it to one of the speakers was, this is an old story that we've seen in other places. Sometimes local people in a particular area have a particular feeling about their community. They'd like to chase the cars out. And I suppose if I lived right there on Yonge Street, I might be thinking too, you know, it'd be great if those cars went somewhere else, just like you're talking about the other streets. And City Council then has to make a decision on that. And, you know, I've always sort of taken the network view. How does this work together with all the pieces? And we talked to somebody from Richmond Hill today.
Sure.
What advice do you have for councillors in trying to weigh these things out about balancing those local wants and, you know, maybe the local councillors got an idea versus what we think as a system, connecting highways and roads and arterials?
Well, we live in a city that's built of communities. And all communities are different. The community up in Etobicoke is different than East York, that's different than Scarborough. I really believe in consulting the community, asking what they want. If they don't want bike lanes on Beecroft, so be it. There shouldn't be bike lanes on Beecroft. And again, we're trying to satisfy less than 1% of the people when 99% of the people use a different mode of transportation. And I got to stress this, I think I've stressed it 8 times here, that it's not anti-bike. It's about doing what the majority of the people in that community want. If someone, wants a park and the whole community, 99% of the people want a park in their community, naturally the councillor's putting a park in there. If 99% of the people don't want bike lanes, you don't put bike lanes in there. But again, it's important that we get the city moving in a proper fashion and getting people, again, from point A to point B as rapidly as possible. My theory has always been, when the city's growing up, you go under. Rather than keep talking, start digging. And don't stop digging. And have a network of subways. The only way you're going to get people out of the car is if you provide a better mode of transportation than their car. And traveling around the world, you see it in Paris, you see it in London, Chicago, New York. Build subways. It's very simple, and that's what we need to do. Thank you, Councillor Haldy.
I'll just advise the committee, Councillor Mahavik came in and he's asked to speak. I don't know, it's a kind of out of order. No, that's what I meant, to ask questions. Is the committee okay with that, or? Yes, I would. Okay. But it's just not how our practice, just so you're aware. We're not trying to be.
I came in as soon as I.
Yeah, that's okay. You've got 3 minutes, just so you know, only 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Councillor Mahavik.
St. Clair, every time
I really miss you chirping in my ear all day.
Every time you mention St. Clair, my popularity goes up.
Yeah, St. Clair disaster.
Yeah. I just want to ask about the consultation piece.
Yes.
You're saying that this is being rammed through.
Yes.
What are you aware of in terms of the consultation that has happened to date on this, with regard to this project?
Councillor Mahavik, I just went along Yonge Street and talked to some of the businesses, talked to some of the owners, the Korean business owners and the Iranian business owners, and I said, do you know this is happening? Has a councillor consulted with you? Has he ever come by to talk to you? Every single person I went to was no, 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 no.
So what
and I'm not hearing
consultation
that
has
here from the
taken place?
deputants.
What consultation are you aware of that has taken place?
As far as I understand, not too much, because the people that I'm hearing today and the people I talked to there hasn't been consultation, proper consultation. Has there been maybe a small group that have met in a corner somewhere or a coffee shop? Maybe. But now the whole city knows about it. Why wasn't this advertised like this is being advertised now? Really, the whole city knows about it because of the media now. No one knew this was coming down the chute.
No one's a pretty big word. Would you be, in the staff report, they indicate that there's been actually a long and extensive consultation process.
So, Councillor Mahavik, why some of the deputants said they haven't even heard about it? Why would the business owners say they haven't heard about it? They've heard about it now because it's out in front in the news, because they're terrified. The people that are terrified in North York, including the prior mayor, is terrified Yonge Street's going to be destroyed like they destroyed Bloor Street, like they destroyed King Street, and like they destroyed Woodbine.
Don't forget St. Clair.
Well, St. Clair, that's an absolute disaster. Those poor guys on St. Clair. It breaks my heart. I avoid St. Clair like the plague.
Thank you very much. Why do you think that York region is going down to 4 lanes?
York region, you said?
York region, north of Steeles.
I can't, you know something?
is to go down to St.
I can't speak for the council up in York.
Why do you think?
All I can tell you is every time I'm on Yonge Street, Yonge and Shepherd, I don't see too many bicycle riders. I just don't see it. Matter of fact, if I drove up there right now, it would take me probably an hour and a half to get up there to fight the congestion.
Why do you think they're going down to 4 lanes? That's the.
You would have to ask the York Council. We're talking Toronto. And anyone that wants to reduce the lanes of traffic, it's very simple. They're anti-car. It's a war on the car. And Councillor Mahavik, you'd be happy if we had a horse and buggy going down the street. You know, that's what it's come down to. Okay. Cars aren't bad things. They aren't going away. Great cities, world-class cities build subways. and they extend their roads. They don't hurt the car driver. It's not going anywhere. We can't get in bikes and hop on the top of Yonge Street and drive down to City Hall. The only person that can do that.
Thanks for not answering my question.
Is Councillor Perruzza, because he's in such great shape. He can bike that distance, but the average person can't bike that distance. Or
Okay.
Councillor de Bearmaker, both great guys, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We're going to move on to our next
Look forward to
speaker.
working in the future.
And the next speaker is Brett McDermott. I think I've got that right. Tell me if I haven't. All right. Welcome, Brett.
Thank you.
Make sure the mic's on in front of you. You can start right now.
Okay, I'm a resident of Willowdale. I'm not representing any groups, and I'm coming because I'm looking to inform you that I'm an avid cyclist, and I oppose reimagining Yonge. I really fear for the businesses along Yonge Street in our area, given the precedents that have been set with King and Bloor and St. Clair, and how much damage has happened to the businesses along there. And I am not persuaded that having bike lanes on Yonge Street will boost business. We've seen numerous examples from Bloor and from King and St. Clair where businesses have been hurt as a result of bike lanes. I cycle, but I only cycle in the warm weather months, so spring to fall. I don't think it's safe to cycle in the wintertime. And then I drive, and I also take transit, and I walk to different places. I think reimagining Yonge is the latest example, frankly, of poor planning in Willowdale. We've had many high-rises built over the last quarter century or so, and I live in one, full disclosure, and there's not been enough transportation infrastructure to keep pace with the high-rise construction. In the Toronto Star article about this subject matter just a couple days ago, Councillor Fillion is quoted as saying, downtown North York should be more than a sea of high-rises. I think that train has left the station. We have lots of high-rises in downtown North York, and they're not going away, and more are being built. I don't see how we can deal with our traffic congestion problems and traffic infrastructure shortages by reducing the amount of traffic lanes, vehicle lanes on Yonge Street. I don't know how it's possible given the fact that we are densifying even more along Yonge. With that in mind, I'm not going to use my whole time. I'll leave it to you to ask me questions.
Thank you very much. Questions? Councillor Mamalady.
So another councillor came in and asked the former deputant, Doug Ford, this question about consultation. And while there was some consultation, do you think, number one, was there enough of it? And the second question I have, which for me is more important, is that last election did Councillor Fillion go into the community and run on the platform that he was going to do this to Yonge Street, to your knowledge?
Okay, so the first question, I mean, there has been some consultation, but I don't think enough. And when I talk to people just on my own in the community, a lot of people, in fact, I've not encountered too many people who know about it. So I think there needs to be more proactive effort done to consult. Second question was, did Councillor Fillion run on a platform in 2014? I don't recall it ever being mentioned at all in 2014.
So given what his community is saying now, here and in the community, don't you think that someone who is in office should say to himself, maybe I shouldn't be rushing this through, maybe I should run on this platform and see whether or not I should actually be the representative after next election? Don't you think that's the more logical thing that he should do?
I think there should be a more fulsome debate on this subject in the next election. Yeah, this year.
Do you think that the councillors are elected to make this substantial change to a community without running on a platform? Or do you think that we're elected just to spend the 4 years figuring out what it is we can get away with and get it done?
I'd like to think that I'm not as cynical as that.
I am.
But I think given the gravity of the change and frankly the inconvenience it would cause the community, that there needs to be a more fulsome debate on this subject.
And let me ask you this, if that were the case, if this became an issue in an election, forget the bureaucratic meetings, okay? Because staff have their own meetings, they're driven by committees and policies in that way, but they'll go into a community and say, what do you like, option A, B, or C, right? Do you think it would be a completely different debate if this were in an election, ready to run, I need your vote because I want to change Yonge Street? Do you think it would be a completely different debate than you're hearing right now?
Yes, yes. You'd have a lot more people stepping up and talking about this, for sure.
So much so that maybe next term of office, this place would be full of people?
I think it would
as
be
opposed
overflowing.
to a handful?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, well, thank you, Brett, and move on to our next speaker, who is Pedram Raberi. I hope I've got that right. President of the Yonge Corridor Condominium Association. Is he? Okay, you're here. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you. Before you start running my clock, I need something for the record. I am the president of TSC 1448, and I'm also the president of the Yonge Corridor Condominium Association, but I'm not speaking on their behalf because we as condo board members are elected to tend to the assets of the corporation and run the operations. We are not mandated to speak on their behalf on foreign policy or healthcare system or things happening in Yonge Corridor. Secondly, for the record, just like Councillor Mamoliti, I don't have a bike. I don't own a bike. I haven't had since I was 14. With that,
You're ready to go?
yeah, exactly.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
I had a very brilliant speech ready for you. It was timed perfectly at 5 minutes. Now I have to edit on the fly, so I'm going to cut it short. I would like to urge you to approve the Transform Yonge option that calls for a reduction of traffic lanes down to 4 and entails enhancing and improving sidewalks and streetscape, and it will be a tremendous value to most local retailers and businesses such as my wife's and myself. Rather than talk in general terms, I would like to relate to you the story of my wife's business to illustrate that, contrary to what you may have heard, not only the massive volume and current makeup of traffic on Yonge Street is not benefiting street side retailers, it is actually detrimental to their business. As a preamble, I would like to give you a brief background of my wife's qualifications. She was, at some point, the manager of a high-end cafe on Eglinton, west of Avenue, and then she went into corporate retail. Her final position, last position, was a district manager for a large Canadian chocolate chain. And under her charge, she had over 20 stores, 20 managers, and over 100 staff. I was also helping her. If I get time, I will tell you about my own business and how this project will affect it. The combination of us is not your typical mom-and-pop operation. So we bring a lot of background and insight, not just in retail, but in business in general, and I'm talking from that standpoint. One spring day, we were walking some 8 years ago, we were walking along Yonge Street. We passed by a large newly built condo with a wide, nice sidewalk, good for patios, and many street-side retail units ready to be leased out. One caught our eyes. It was a big unit, corner, right by sculpture, wraparound windows and everything. A big sign on the window said 40,000 cars pass by this location every day. Now I'm hearing it's 55,000. Now, I used to teach business planning at the University of Toronto many years ago. And one of the things I used to tell my students is that numbers don't need to be verified only. They need to be appraised critically and interpreted. If you can't do that, just throw them out. They're irrelevant. I did a lot of tests on different days, and one of the first things that I told my wife before we leased the location was that if you intend to sell breakfast, forget it in your business plan. And if you intend, or if you're counting on people driving by and stopping and getting cakes or gifts when going home, forget about that stream in your business plan as well, because simply cars cannot park there. Now,
Wrap up, please.
you see, traffic, that's the point. Traffic is only valuable to retail if it can be translated into pedestrian traffic. Otherwise, you would have great retailers along 401. You don't.
Is there any questions for this, Councillor Fillion?
Pedram, just to finish your story, so your wife had a business and there was no shortage of cars driving by, but what you really needed were more pedestrians. Is that your story in a nutshell?
Absolutely. Anyone who's dealt with retail, you knows that cars don't buy things. Their passengers do, and their passengers should be able to park. Now, if you can't park somewhere, you won't have retail. Now, in King Street, the problem is that you don't have any cars, and they need to address that problem. On Yonge Street, the problem is that the volume of the car that you're talking about cannot park when they're passing by. The rest of the day, Yonge is not a very busy street in that stretch. The volume that you see basically is during the rush hour. We did a study. My wife was training her staff to ask questions from customers where they were living. It wasn't nosiness. We wanted to make sure that we knew which buildings we didn't have customers enough from, or which streets, so that we could target our advertising. And lo and behold, by the third year of operation, we had about 50,000 customer visits. 90% were coming from an 800-meter radius of the store. The other 10% came from farther out, even downtown Toronto all the way to Aurora. But all of them were coming due to newspaper advertising, a couple of TV spots that we ran, and word of mouth. In all the 4 years of operation, we only had one single couple from Markham who said that, oh, we were passing by during the week and we said we have to check the store. One. That volume of traffic is not helping businesses, and because of the noise and air pollution that it creates, many of the patios become useless because you can't hear yourself think. I love to go and sit in a patio because I work from home now. It's been 10 years. With my laptop, check my emails, do some business, have a coffee, or chat with someone, and you can't do it between 3 to 7. You can't, simply. So my point here is, whatever you've heard, I would really take them with a huge grain of salt. Businesses need pedestrians. This volume of traffic does not translate into pedestrians. So for businesses, it is imperative that you crack down on this volume of traffic and make the area a destination for people to walk in.
Okay, thank you.
My second question has to do with consultation. Are you aware of the consultation that took place both by the city staff and by myself?
I attended 2 of the consultations. I knew of 2 or 3 more maybe that I didn't attend, but since I'm on a board, I used to pass on the information. We usually put the notices on our elevators and also our mass emails. We also had 1 consultation in our building. We asked you to come in, and the 2 towers that we have over 2,000 people living there. So that's the one that I know. And then as a YCCA, we also had a meeting with you and the city staff, and mostly there were board members, but some also guests that participated.
And at those meetings, were most people in favor of the transform option?
Yep. Can you answer very quickly, because we're over time?
Yeah, generally in favor, yeah.
Okay. There's 2 more questions, so we'll start with Councillor Holladay.
Chair, thank you for speaking to us today. You mentioned, I guess your previous answer that from 3 to 7 you can't enjoy a patio on Yonge Street. Why is that?
Because of the volume of traffic, the noise, and pollution. Because you either have a backup of cars, and then when you get to that point, if you live there like I have for some 16, 17 years, people start honking, and you can't hear much. And then it's not red lights. They are really going past by, and the noise is not something that you really want to sit by.
So bumper-to-bumper traffic is not a very pleasant environment to be in.
Yeah.
I get it. So if we reduce the lanes from 6 to 4, do you not think the periods of bumper-to-bumper traffic will then extend?
No, because it's the rush hour. People don't go out because they want to go out at certain hours. They have to get to work by 9 o'clock. That's why you have 7 to 9 rush hour. You can't park, right? So those people who have to be at work at 9, if they see that this road doesn't take, well, takes them 20 minutes more to get to where they want to go, they'll find alternative routes.
So they'll just steer out of the area so that they'll go elsewhere.
It spreads. As any traffic engineer, because my background is in consulting engineering, any serious traffic engineer will tell you that if you create capacity, it's going to fill up. And if you reduce capacity, people will find ways of spreading the load. It's not going to be necessarily optimal, but it can happen.
Yeah, I think it's more a question of economics than engineering, but I see how they work together. But do you not believe, though, that, you know, instead of having a rush hour till 7, you know, because the traffic curve is kind of a curve, right? Like it peaks up and it goes down, that by reducing capacity, you will push out those brackets. So instead of it being 3 in the afternoon that you can't have your coffee, it'll be 1 in the afternoon, or maybe it'll be all day, because with 4 lanes instead of 6, you have no free-flowing traffic. You have bumper-to-bumper condition all day, maybe even on the weekend.
I get your point, but probably I didn't explain myself properly. If you have a 7 to 9 major rush hour, it will not extend beyond 9, because people have to be have to be at work by 9 o'clock. So it might become 6:30 to 9, but it's not going to become 7 to 10. The same goes for the afternoon traffic. People cannot leave work before 4, 5, or wherever they finish their work. So you're not going to have traffic at 1 o'clock. Maybe you will extend the traffic to 7:30 or 8, but it's not going to work backwards, right?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, so you said your wife owned a business?
Yeah, a cafe. Actually, I'm very proud of that.
Is it still there?
No, actually, after 4 years, we came to the conclusion that the effort, because in the first 2 years, she had only 1 day off the whole year.
So it's not there anymore. Do you live in the area?
Actually, we sold it. It is there. I do live, 15, 16 years now.
You live in the condo?
Yes.
Because some condo owners don't live in the condo. They help manage it or sit on a board or whatever.
It doesn't make much difference because we have residents. In my condo, specific condo, out of 330 units, 220 of them are owner residents.
The other part that I don't understand is that I frequent many restaurants on Yonge Street, north of Shepherd, all the time.
Right.
And I like the Chinese restaurants and the Japanese restaurants there. And there's parking outside. And I actually have a hard time finding parking on the outside of the units.
Of course.
And it's very busy, actually, and it's usually packed every night in those restaurants. So that's the part of it that I don't understand. You said that there's no parking, but there's parking on the street right now.
You didn't catch my point then. I said during rush hour 7 to 9, which is a time at a coffee shop that is offering freshly brewed coffee and freshly baked croissant, is going to make a sale. 7 to 9, you can't park. 3 to 7, again, you cannot park.
You realize that Councillor Fillion's model takes the parking completely away.
That's a different issue because, in my opinion, there are ways of addressing that, like lay-bys. Actually, Councillor Shiner referred to.
But you're aware of that, right?
Yes, I am aware of that. But the point that was made about Avenue is absolutely an absolute fallacy. Because Avenue is 4 lanes, and then you've got lay-bys.
I'm not going to get into the debate with you. I disagree with some of the things you said because I don't believe it. But this model that's being pitched to us takes the parking away, okay? I don't know how that helps you. And secondly, you believe that the cars that are coming up and down Yonge Street don't help business?
Don't, no.
Do you think the bicycles down the middle of Yonge Street are going to help your business?
I mentioned I don't care about bicycles personally. So I don't know whether they will help. I don't have any models that tells me that they will help or not. Personally, I'm not really that much interested. But what I know is that this volume of traffic in the morning and afternoon is detrimental.
Okay, so one of the reasons, I have an old North Yorker who's been around for 28 years as a politician, so I was with Mel Lassman, and I heard all the debates that came forward over the years. And one of the reasons there's so many condos there and so many units there of new people that brought new people
Last
to the
question.
community is to actually help the business community with the pedestrians.
Right.
Are you telling me that none of them that live in a condo or a rental unit walk downstairs and go shopping, go grocery shopping, go to restaurants?
No, they do. I'm not saying that they don't. And as I told you, 90% of our customers lived within a 100-meter radius of the store.
Okay.
So they sustain the store,
Okay.
but it's not enough.
Okay, thank
for
you.
most of these businesses.
Thank you very much. That's the end of your questions. Before we move on to our next speaker, I want to just bring to the committee's attention a bit of a challenge that we have. For those of you who are with us today that aren't aware that on Fridays there's a sunset clause, and we've spent the last half an hour trying to figure out if we could push that in any way. We've been advised by the city clerk that it's a hard finish at 3:30 p.m. today. So there's no way around that, even though I know personally I would like to stay and complete this agenda more than probably anybody. I'm guessing my colleagues feel the same way. So that is unfortunate, but apparently there's absolutely no way around it. So we have to finish the agenda and vacate the room at 3:30 p.m. So my apologies for that, but it's a policy that I can't alter. So I'll be moving a motion to, and the clerk is just working on it now. Okay, she hasn't got the motion ready. Yeah, we're going to continue to hear deputations, so please don't leave. But I felt like I needed to relay that to the committee room. The clerk's working on a motion, so I'll present it when she has it finished. And so we'll go on to our next speaker, which is Michael Kaur, President. And it says there's a mistake here. It says 880 cities, but it's actually, Michael, I believe, is with the West Willowdale Neighborhood Association, but maybe you can clarify.
Correct. That is correct.
And you're the president of that association?
Correct.
Okay, you can start. Thank you, Michael.
Good afternoon. I'm a resident within a few blocks of Yonge Street between Shepherd and Finch, and I often consider myself a North York boomerang. Born and raised in central North York, I went to university in Ottawa and lived a short time in Mississauga, but decided to move back to the neighborhood to live and raise my family. I know of 7 other boomerang residents in my area, and we all share a familiar, if not familial, connection to this community and the businesses that support it. It is the basis of this connection that motivated me to become a founding member and current president of the West Willowdale Neighborhood Association. Now, when I first heard about the proposal, I was in my kitchen with my wife, and I thought this was a ridiculous idea. When you say you're going to take away a lane of traffic, yes, traffic is going to be a mess. True. If you stop there, full stop, yes, it's a ridiculous idea. If we stop there, where would we be today? We need to dig deeper. So I did some reading, I listened to the experts, and I became convinced that it's absolutely necessary. I'm here to express my personal support for implementing the Transform Young option recommended in Stage 1 and confirmed in Stage 2 for several reasons. The people involved in this project were not selected randomly. Their qualifications supported by their professionalism and areas of education, combined with 2 years of public consultation, ensured for a thorough recommendation. Yonge Street is currently 6 lanes. Beecroft and Doris are 4 lanes. That's 14 lanes of traffic going north-south within close proximity to each other. Based on the transportation modeling conducted and existing traffic volumes, the service roads Beecroft and Doris have surplus capacity to accommodate traffic volumes from Yonge. And similar to other speakers today, the non-local residents that make up 70-ish of the rush hour traffic will hit reduced lanes long before Finch if York Region goes through and goes down to 4 lanes. Bike lanes on Yonge would provide a safe transportation option, connecting people conveniently to all the destinations along Yonge. Also, putting bike lanes on Beecroft instead of Yonge would cost at least an additional $20 million. It should also be noted that Transform Yonge option recommended can be implemented over a shorter time frame than the other options explored. Our community is made up of people who drive, walk, push strollers, ride bikes, pull wagons, use walkers, shop local, eat local, gather together in Melasman Square, and spend time together. The Transform Yonge recommendation is the next logical step in our continuing efforts for positive change, while remembering to meet the needs of the people that make up this community. This section of Yonge Street is a gem in our great city, but it has been neglected for too many years. This is a pivotal moment in our downtown North York's history. You have a great opportunity and responsibility to make a lasting, positive community impact. Please endorse and approve Transform Yonge, the recommended design for the reconstruction of Yonge Street. North York boomerangs always feel the need to come back no matter where they go or for how long. But I sincerely believe, with your support, you will be able to build a generation with fewer boomerangs and more pillars. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you very much, Michael. Stephen Biggs is our next speaker. And after that is Sarah. If Sarah's still here, you're here, excellent. Then if you can be ready to jump up, because I'm a little bit worried about time, obviously. Okay, so Stephen, if you want to get comfortable and start. I'm going to be very hard with the 3 minutes, unfortunately.
Okay, am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a boomerang too, I guess like the previous deputant. I grew up in North York Centre in the 1970s and the 1980s, and it was a quiet place, and the cars actually moved along Yonge Street at that time. And I live there again now, and I have to say that I'm stuck in traffic wherever I go in North York Centre, and I really dislike the traffic. But when I grew up in that area, it was very suburban, and now it's almost a vibrant urban neighborhood, except that there's one problem, which is that running down the center of our neighborhood, it's a bit like the Grand Canyon. It's Yonge Street. It divides the neighborhoods, and they don't work in the same way when you cut a neighborhood in half. I shop on Yonge Street, but I avoid cycling there because it is pretty dangerous to cycle there. My father lives still on the other side of Yonge Street, and he's a senior, and he does not like to cross Yonge Street because 7 lanes of traffic is daunting for an older person sometimes. So all of those lanes of traffic that, that people are talking about, I think were appropriate at a certain point in time. And, but we're not in a 1970s suburb anymore, and it's really evolved. We have all these high-rises, and they're kind of like high-rises on the banks of Yonge Street. And it's wide, Yonge Street's wide, it's loud, it's noisy, and it's windy, and it's dusty, and it's just not a place where people want to go to. So I rarely take my kids to Yonge Street, and it's too bad because there's a lot of potential along Yonge Street. I'd like to say that if Yonge Street here downtown was being reimagined, or if Queen Street just beside Nathan Phillips Square was being reimagined, I don't think there'd be any discussion about making 6 lanes, even if there was that much space. I can't imagine anyone saying that. And these are dynamic places with lots of foot traffic, lots of pedestrians, and lots of cars. Downtown here, we have Richmond and Adelaide that are one way, and they move the traffic around. And up in North York Centre, we have a ring road system that includes Beecroft and Doris. And this system moves the traffic around that North York Centre area. And the city spent a lot of money building that specifically to move the cars. So I think we can't forget that important point. So I would ask this committee if you would please help make this North York Centre area and Yonge Street a more vibrant space by choosing Transform Yonge. I think it's really important. We don't need a Grand Canyon going through the middle of our neighborhood. And it's really as it is, it's like a bit of a no man's land.
Okay,
so we need multi-use.
Thank you very much.
I have 2 cars in my driveway, and I drive all over the place too, so.
Okay, any questions? Councillor Mamalady.
Sir, you live in the area?
I do.
And you want it revitalized that way?
I do indeed want it revitalized.
And you actually think that you're going to get less vehicles by reducing the lanes?
No, I don't think there will be fewer vehicles. I think the number of vehicles will remain constant.
All right, so the
But I think
55,000,
to let me finish answering that, back to those ring roads that I was mentioning, we have an excellent ring road system that was built to accommodate vehicles, and I think
Yes,
if this
and-
plan goes ahead, then vehicles will choose that alternate route, which, by the way, when I drive that very often, there's very few cars. So I do believe vehicles will move over to that ring road system.
so the ring road system, I was in North York when Councillor Fillion argued during the whole discussion around development in that area. Before all those high rises and condos were built, Councillor Shiner would remember this, there were arguments about how to deal with the traffic that the condos are going to bring. Councillor Fillion argued for the ring roads. He wanted the ring roads for that reason, right? So today we're hearing, forget the ring roads. Let's reduce the lanes on Yonge Street now.
Sorry, I didn't catch the question.
My question is, don't you think that they would have already started to use the ring roads?
So you're asking,
55,000 vehicles?
you're asking why people don't take the ring roads?
Right.
Path of least resistance, I would think.
So you,
But I can tell you that driving those ring roads, there is space on those ring roads. And I think it's an important part of the discussion I haven't heard come up very often today, that there's this elaborate system of ring roads, tons of money spent to build them. And I think we can't forget that part of it.
so there seems to be some willingness, I'm not going to be supporting it, but there seems to be some willingness to use Beeford as a bicycle pathway now instead of Yonge Street. How does that help?
Are you asking for my opinion, or are you asking from a traffic planning perspective?
You're a community resident, you live in the area. You seem,
My personal view is that the bicycles belong on Yonge Street, because this is where we're going to see more community people come out and be involved in that Yonge Street streetscape.
do you think that this is something that we should decide on immediately, or based on what we're hearing with, should it be on Yonge Street, should it be on side streets? Shouldn't an election determine that? You got 9 months. You got 9 months
I'd
before
have
the
to
election.
say, I don't believe that we have to tackle issues by referenda or election. I think we elect people, and the city hires experts to study this, and there's been 2 very costly studies take place so far. So to me, having an election on it would be wasting taxpayers' money, and I think we've spent lots.
I'm not saying a referendum. I'm saying
we're
next
done.
election in October. There's one coming up in 9 months.
Oh, my God. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on unless there's any other questions. Thank you very much, Stephen and Sarah. You're ready to go. Thank you for being right there and ready to roll. As soon as you sit down, I'll start your time.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me here. I live at St. Clair and Bathurst. I don't live in the area. I do go there, I shop there, I visit friends there, I go to the doctor there, I go to the movies, so I do know the area. It is very time-consuming and difficult to make a deputation, as you know, or difficult to devote the time to doing that, and a lot of people aren't heard. So I decided to prepare for my deputation that I would go up to Yonge and Shepherd and walk north and talk to people. And originally, I was going to try and videotape them and give you their responses, but I quickly realized on a cold, windy day, no one is going to want to linger that long. So I just asked for their responses. Obviously not a statistical survey, but just letting you know, about half of the people I spoke to were in support. A few said they didn't know enough to make a decision, and then a few were opposed. So a lot of people have already talked about why they support this. So I support this. I'm here to support Transform Yonge. But I did want to talk about the opposition because I think it's important, and I think it's important to hear what people are saying when they're opposed. So the main reason for the opposition was congestion, like people are talking about. How can you take 6 lanes down to 4 lanes and not have traffic nightmare? But the thing is that studies, time and time again, show that congestion does not increase when you take away lanes. There's this thing called the disappearing effect. I'm not a transportation engineer, but there are many who have found this, who have talked about this. So you don't have cars piling up on top of each other. They dissipate. Drivers choose alternate routes, alternate times, and alternate modes. So that was the main concern that I heard from people. When I asked them if they would like a main street, they said, yeah, they would, but they just don't want congestion. So it's not that they're opposed to main streets, they're opposed to congestion. Small business, someone said, we're not taking care of the little guy, we need to watch out for small business. I absolutely depend on local business. I don't think there should be this division between pedestrians, like this imaginary thing between small local business and me as a resident. I need a place to go as much as I need a safe way to get there. Final opposition I heard was about the spending. Why is the city spending money on something we don't need? So the first response to that is, as far as I understand, the city will be spending millions of dollars in this area, no matter what happens. Now, this compromise that people are talking about is $71 million, $20 million more than Transform Young, and it will please nobody. It's not addressing the real issue. So, city staff are experts in transportation and planning. They look at the numbers, they look at the facts, they look at the evidence, and they make their recommendation to you, the councillors. You, councillors, are experts in communication, and you've been elected because of your vision and because of your leadership. That's your strength. So I believe if you have a vision for a more livable city, you need to listen to your staff, and you need to communicate and understand what they're saying, and you need to communicate those benefits to the public, and then I think we can all work together and agree that, yes, North York should have its own downtown. Yes, North York should have its own Main Street.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, I'll see if there's any questions for you. There's a question for you from Councillor Mamalady.
So you live at St. Clair and
Bathurst.
So how long have you been there?
17 years. I've been in Toronto for 40 years, so I'm here as a Toronto member, like everyone.
Okay, so you've seen St. Clair's, we may disagree, but
probably,
on St. Clair,
unfortunately.
yeah. Well, no, and I lived through it because there was a family unit that we owned on St. Clair. We had to let it go because of the transformation, the LRT. Business got shut down almost right away. In fact, there was no business at all after that. So I'm not sure how you feel about that. Do you find there's more business on St. Clair after the LRT down the middle of the road?
I don't want to use your time because I think they want to talk about North York, but I will say I'm a resident. It's so much safer for me. It's so much better for me. And I go to local restaurants, toy store, bakery. There's thriving business. So I don't want to debate it with you because it's not a good use of your time or theirs.
No, but you came here and the first thing you said is you live there and you think that this community should accept what the councillors wants to pass and what staff seem to want to pass.
Right.
So I get to ask the questions with respect to your experiences. If you think that that's a good experience, that's fine. I'm taking that in, right? What do you say to the residents that feel there should be an election on this issue in October to delay it for 9 months to see whether or not Councillor Fillion is actually right in his feeling that people in that community will want it? In other words, a mandate given to a particular person to push it through or not push it through?
I don't think I'm an expert on this to say whether I agree with you. I do think we need to hear the community. I do think there's been a lot of work done, and I don't generally think delay is good, and I don't think delay for political purposes is necessarily the best thing. But I understand what you're saying, and yes, I think, I don't want to shut anybody's voice down, but I think that we should. Okay, so let
me ask you a question.
Yeah.
If on St. Clair, someone came along, the councillor of the day, whoever that is, came along and said, I am going to take away all of the LRT. It's going, done, gone. Do you believe that that councillor should have the mandate to do it in the middle of a term? Or do you think that councillor should introduce it to the community to see whether or not they want that councillor to push that agenda through? It's your community. Would you want someone to just eliminate it because they just feel like it?
If someone one day said that, of course I would say, we need to have a process around this. We need to talk about it. I think there has been a process around this.
Not a political one. And that's been my point and the community's point. There hasn't been a political process. There's been a bureaucratic process, and there's been some effort in having some meetings, yes, but there hasn't been a political process.
Okay.
Would you want a political process in the scenario I gave you, or would you just let somebody just rail it through?
Because you're asking the election, I'm running for mayor and I want a more livable city. That's the election. I think the vision of the whole city is what's important. That's what we need to talk about. But individual ward issues and decisions on you know, what we're doing needs to be part of a process that the city has agreed on.
Okay, thank you. I've got a motion I'm going to place here. The clerks have prepared this for me. Thank you to the clerk. She's going to put it up on the screen, and so we can vote on it now. That item be deferred. That the item be deferred to the next meeting.
Point of order.
We're going to continue through to 3:30.
Point of order.
Just a minute. I'd like to place it first, and then we'll go there. That the item be deferred to the next meeting, February 27th, 2018, or a special meeting of the committee, if it is scheduled by the chair, for the purpose of completing the registered speakers and committee debate on the item. So just again to clarify for people who are in the audience, there is a policy practice by council to have a hard finish at 3:30 for those who have religious practices, possibly this on a Friday evening. And so that's a long-standing policy of council. So we have no way around that. We've spent a good hour trying to get around it, and there's no way around it. So we have to finish at 3:30, exactly at 3:30.
Look, you know, Madam Speaker, I know you want to finish at 3:30. There are people that still want to speak. I was going to try to move a motion that has the local residents who are left on the agenda put up first instead of those that have their own agendas somewhere else. But in this particular case, with this motion, I could support it, but the word register, it worries me because what you're saying is nobody else can be a deputant.
That's correct.
Well, I think that based on the amount of discussion that's going on here, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot more people in the community that want to depute, and I would say to drop that word to allow them the ability to come next meeting to be able to depute. That in my opinion, it's bad enough that we took 5 minutes and made them speak for 3. Now we're trying to tell the rest of the community that don't know about this that they don't even have the right to speak.
Well, there is I specifically put that word in there, and the reason being is these are the people that came today to speak and committed to speaking, and so it's just a carryover of what's the proceedings from today onto another date. So that was my intent, but I'm open to the committee's suggestions.
Are you prepared to drop the word so that others can register to speak at the next meeting, to add on to the deputations?
So we'll vote on this, and then you can move another motion, Councillor Mamalidi, if you'd like to do that, and then we'll test the waters that way.
I just don't know where we're coming from with this city.
I want to be clear that we're going to continue to hear.
I'd like to speak to the motion, please.
Till 3:30.
I'd like to speak to the motion.
So please do not leave.
I'd like to speak to the motion.
Can you speak to the motion? Okay, yes. So you have 3 minutes to.
Well, let
so then first, Councillor Fillion goes first.
Yes, I would suggest, it's very unfortunate that what's happened, frankly. It's been the questions of the speakers. We could have been through the speakers by now and on to questions of staff, but obviously this is a controversial issue that is going to get decided by council anyway, regardless of what came out of this committee. There is a budgetary factor in this that is important it gets to the next council meeting. So I would ask instead that you just send it to council with that recommendation.
And let me just ask you a question on your recommendation. I guess I can't really, it's not a motion, but I guess my question, friendly question would be.
I'm asking someone to take carriage of that.
Move, okay, so then we wouldn't be able to hear the rest of the deputants, so you're aware that we wouldn't be able to finish the.
It's unfortunate.
We have 11 speakers left. 11.
I know, but I think it's more important that it get to council, then that people, people can send in written submissions. It's not, neither one is ideal, but it's more important that it get to council.
I will move Councillor Fillion's motion, but I'll be voting against it.
Okay.
Madam Speaker.
Okay, sorry.
Out of respect for my colleague, okay, I'll move his motion, but I'll be voting against it.
Okay, so just, I'm going to come to you in a minute. So just so in case everybody's just on the same page, Councillor Lee has accepted moving the motion on behalf of Councillor Fillion, but it's indicated he will not support it. Councillor Shiner.
As the councillor that still represents part of the area that is going to be encumbered with the traffic and some of the proposed lane reductions, because it does go north of Finch and will have a horrendous impact up there, I would ask you not to go along with Councillor Fillion's suggestion and not allow the public that has taken the time to come down and speak to speak. That's not fair, to cut off the debate and the ability for them to say things. And in fact, that's been one of their complaints, that they didn't have that through Councillor Fillion's process to speak their mind. They could only answer to the staff questions and the staff surveys. This is the only chance that they actually have to address council and give us their perspective, and stopping off that debate and cutting that off by saying, send us a letter that nobody reads anyways, okay, I find is something we should never do to people. And I would ask you not to support that.
Okay, other speakers on this item?
Yeah, I said I want to speak. And I'm going to move an amendment to the motion, 2 amendments. One is that you remove the word register, so that gives anybody that wants to speak an ability to register. And the second is that the date for the next, for us to hear this would be after the 2018 election.
Madam.
So the next, so my motion would be that. Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing?
I'm sorry.
No,
it's
you know,
funny.
Madam Chair, you heard people in the community talk about this. It's affecting their livelihood, and we're
kind
laughing.
of slipping it into a different motion. This is a procedural motion on how to address the fact that we've run out of time.
I'm changing. Can you stop?
You have to wait your turn.
Why is he allowed to interject?
No, he's not.
All right, then can you
spouting gibberish
can you tame him? Do you have one of those neck collars that you could put around him?
Okay, Councillor Mamalidi, you have 45 seconds.
No, I don't. I should have more because I've been interjected, number one.
Okay, we'll give
and
you a
two,
minute
you were
and a
laughing
half.
halfway through my motion. So you should allow me an opportunity to speak to my
Yeah, so go ahead.
amendments.
Yeah,
So,
please
so
speak.
I'm moving February 27th, 2018 to after the election of 2018, okay? And the reason I'm doing that is simple. Not only are we trying to ram through an incredible stoppage in traffic at the worst intersection in the city, we are now trying to tell people that, one, they can't even speak if they find out about it tomorrow. They can't even register. And number two, you won't even allow them the opportunity to have an election on this issue so that they can tell the councillor who's trying to ram this thing through to hit the road, because they don't want this to happen. The community doesn't want this to happen. This is a driven attempt by staff and a driven attempt by the local councillor to do something that is undemocratic and not fair. And today, we reduced the speaking time from 5 minutes to 3 minutes. You know why? Just for the hell of it. We don't want to hear from people. We don't want to hear from people because we have to finish at 3:30. Poor politicians have to finish at 3:30. So let's stonewall everybody and tell them they have to come back another day and reduce their time to speak on an issue because we have to finish at 3:30. What an incredible show of democracy that we've got here. Incredible. And what do we do about it? We laugh, we joke. The local councillor, let's just bring it to council without a recommendation and let council decide. How cocky and irresponsible are we here?
Okay, your time is up now. Thank you. I think we have other speakers on this, so Councillor Holladay is next. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you actually, well, you didn't really, you just actually interjected. Did you? Okay, so please go ahead. You've got 3 minutes. We're going to have to be careful with the time.
I just wanted to make a recommendation that the item be deferred to a special meeting, but prior to council. So we can have a, look, I'm happy to sit and listen to all the deputies and more. But that doesn't mean that we have to delay the process or filibuster it. We can listen to people. We can have another special council meeting early next week at the call of the chair. I believe the notice is somewhere in the neighborhood of 48 hours she has to give to people, or was it 72 hours? Whatever that notice is. Have a special meeting and let's just deal with this matter. Let's move on with it. Like really, like dragging it out, that doesn't serve anybody. And I know that George has been like filibustering it today. He's asked sort of, I don't want to say mundane or
Point of order.
You're right, sorry.
Point of order.
Every question is important, George.
Not a point of order.
It's not a point of order, that he can allude to what my...
Your point of order is procedural.
He can allude to what my agenda is, Madam Chair. He can allude to what I'm doing in...
Point of personal privilege is what you're saying.
I'm asking you to interject when you hear these things.
So I'm saying point, if you need to say point of personal privilege.
Well, then let me do that. Point of personal privilege.
So, Madam Speaker, George has had a lot to say about a lot today. That's fine. I'm happy to sit here and hear George say a lot about a lot. No worries. And I'm happy to do that early next week again, to hear George say a lot about a lot, and I'm happy to hear all the deputies that want to come down and speak to the committee. So I suggest that as a friendly amendment to yours.
So, Councillor Perruzza, the clerk has just advised that this report can't make it to this council. That is not feasible from the perspective of clerks for a number of reasons, including there's no dates available between now and council. But I would ask the clerk to address the committee.
I'm saying a special meeting just to hear the deputies, Speaker. There's no...
So let's just get clarification procedurally.
If you want this to proceed before the City Council meeting on January 31st, the meeting has to happen before next Thursday.
Fine. So why don't we do that?
There's an executive committee meeting, there's the budget committee meeting, and there's another committee meeting on Monday. So the dates are...
I don't know how many of us here are on the executive or on the budget committee.
Well, I am. I'm on executive, but obviously, I guess I'm sitting here. Okay, so the clerk has advised us accordingly. Now, Councillor Holyday, you wanted to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to move a similar motion to that, just without the word registered. I do respect some of the opinions of some of the folks that have come forward here today that have complained about process. And as expensive as it is to sit in the room with additional speakers, I'm comfortable doing that. I would forewarn, though, that I would be prepared to put a motion similar to today to limit the speaking time to 3 minutes, to be fair.
Can I ask you a question, Councillor Holyday? So when you say that, do you mean then new people can join the mix, but anybody who's spoken already cannot speak again, or association or organization?
Yeah,
I just wanted clarification.
Yeah, if that has to be built in the motion, I'm comfortable with that. I wouldn't want somebody returning to speak again, but I have seen items held over from meeting to meeting, and if others wish to join the conversation, I don't feel comfortable stopping that right at this point in time.
Point of order. And I have, believe it or not, over the last 28 years, chaired committees, and I understand that when this scenario takes place, that in fact anybody that has spoken can actually speak again. Am I right, Madam Clerk?
Let's ask friends.
For a statutory meeting, there may be legal implications for it, but this is not a statutory meeting, so it's solely within the committee's purview to decide how it wants to conduct the deputations.
So what we've been told is we decide. The committee decides.
Okay, and the second part of my...
We're losing precious time here.
Second part of my question to you is, after we vote on your motion, will you be allowing me to place my own motion to have the community members here bumped up today, at least to hear from them, as opposed to some of the special interest groups?
Well, I don't know. I think we have to accommodate your motion, but I'm not sure if it'll pass. That's up to
I'd like to do that, so at least the community people will have a voice today.
We can't speak anymore?
Nobody can speak anymore, but you can hold back the vote. You can hold the vote.
Oh, okay.
So you might want to take.
So we have to hold, okay, so what I've just been advised, and I wasn't actually aware of this, as soon as we pass the deferral motion, the meeting ends. So what I'd recommend is we hold off on this. We've had a good debate. Some good points have been made. We hold off on this. We hear a few more people. I know I'm personally, upset that people have waited all day, literally since 9:30 to be here, have been here since 9:30 and waited to speak, and now they're not going to get to speak. And I'm sure my committee members share that sentiment. So let's try to hear 2 or 3 more speakers.
Some of us did want to work through lunch as well, by the way.
And Councillor Mamalady is moving this motion.
And I'd like to move that now, if you allow me to.
That's for right now. So we can vote on this. We just can't vote on the deferral motion till the end. So you see the motion before us. It's self-explanatory. All in favor?
Recorded vote, please.
What does a member of the community over someone else mean? They're all community members of sorts.
Recorded vote, please.
Like, how do you determine who gets priority over others if the motion passes?
All the special interest groups are your buddies.
All in favor?
Special interest group.
All in favor, recorded vote.
Is the West Lansing Homeowners Association, would they be a special interest group?
I don't know.
Councillor Mamalady, Councillor Lee, all those opposed? Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Holliday, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Peruzza, that motion fails.
Okay, now we move on to our speakers. I'm going to be very tight with time, so I'm going to just ask you to speak for the 3 minutes exactly. Alistair Robertson, if you want to, you're still here. Thank you for waiting. Next person is Kevin Cooper, and then Xin Gao is after that. There you are. Great. So if you can get prepared. You've got 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm the president of the Bay Cumber Neighborhood Association. We represent 1,800 homes in the area north of Finch, which is, if this project is the creation of a funnel on Yonge Street, we are the top of the funnel where the overflow goes. And we have some profound concerns about what happens if you restrict the flow on Yonge Street without making other steps to accommodate the traffic. And we would have you understand 2 very important points about Willowdale. And I say this based on over 30 years of experience with various reimaginings of Yonge Street and of Willowdale, and a long experience as a cyclist, a motorcyclist, a pedestrian, and a driver in Willowdale. The traffic problems in Willowdale do not originate in Willowdale. And they're tied to some very basic considerations. The first of those considerations is at York Mills, where the GO bus station and the subway is, along with a TTC parking lot to make it easier for people to drive into the city and park to get on transit. The next is the 401 interchange, which, as I understand it, the city would like the province to spend more than $1 billion to rebuild, to resolve the on and off ramp issues onto that roadway. The next problem is the bus terminal at Shepherd Avenue, which is there on the transit node to make it possible for people to move east and west. The final one in Willowdale is the largest bus terminal in the city, which is the one at Finch Avenue, just on the edge of this proposed scheme. But in addition to that, there are all the thousands and thousands of people who are living north of Steeles Avenue in York Region who commute daily into the city. And those people are not going away. You heard a presentation earlier today about the future of autonomous vehicles, and what they told you was more volume, more volume. If you look at the path of development north of Steeles Avenue, it doesn't take a genius to see that the pattern is more development, more development, more development. If the province gives them the money to continue the subway up to Langstaff Road, more people, more people, more people. But unless the capacity of that subway goes up, they're still going to need to drive to get through Willowdale to the 401. Basic fact. That fact is not going to change regardless of any other considerations which come into this. The other is because of the way in which Willowdale has been developed over the last 30 years, it's a community of commuters. I heard somebody on the radio today talking about, well, it should be a downtown, but the reality of it is it's not. It's a suburb with a lot of vertical suburbs. That's what it is, because we don't have employment in Willowdale, which makes it possible for people to work in Willowdale. So they have to leave to go and work, or in many cases, they have to leave to go and work.
Okay, I'm sorry.
And without changing that, you can't get around the fundamental problem. So if you don't address those issues, and you simply shut off the flow of traffic through Yonge Street, if you don't take into consideration actually making the ring roads work, and if you don't consider what you do for the rest of the community, where are we?
Any questions
Yes.
for Alistair?
Well,
Okay,
the
visiting councillors are first. Councillor Carroll?
So, hi, Alistair. So if we want to preserve that, then what do we do to those ring roads that would help Willowdale?
Well, we got to figure out how to make it work. And the challenge is not about reimagining Yonge Street, it's about reimagining Willowdale. Because we went through this process for years and years about the ring roads. The problem with the ring roads is everything we've done since has been to prevent people from using the ring roads. So they don't go anywhere at the top and they don't go anywhere at the bottom. They just dump people back out onto Yonge Street just north of Shepherd Avenue, and they kind of sort of come out at Finch Avenue. So if we don't resolve that issue, they don't do us any good. We've done everything we can to reduce the speed on them, and then we periodically have safety blitzes to discourage people from driving on them. So everything we've done has been to discourage people from driving on them. In effect, they're a boundary between the one-line development joke that is the Yonge Street core and the suburban neighborhoods that predate them. And if we're serious about reimagining Yonge Street, we have to go farther. We have to look at the whole thing. It's not rational to say if we just choke up one piece of it, we can fix the whole problem. We have to look at the whole thing all the way to Steeles Avenue in the long run. And if we don't do that, all we're doing is we're moving the problem someplace else in Willowdale.
So if the plan were made to include some of those fixes, don't you want some sort of plan to proceed so that the funds being kept in the capital budget to make sure that something's done to fix those things for Willowdale, that proceeds as soon as possible?
I think what we've heard here overwhelmingly today is that people want the whole issue resolved. But you can't resolve it with the one piece. It's more complicated than that, and pretending it isn't, or pretending that one particular vested interest or another particular vested interest is the fix, does a disservice to all the people who actually live there and the people who want it to be a vibrant community.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Mamalady?
Sorry, Madam.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Councillor Shiner, go ahead.
I know. What was I called earlier?
Scrawny.
I'm so scrawny you can't see me.
I've never felt that way, but.
I know, Alistair. So, Alistair, quickly, the ring roads.
Yeah.
The biggest problem with them is that is it not that they're a boundary to anyone on Yonge Street getting into any of the residential areas between Shepherd and Finch, because they're a hard stop and they stop the use of the cross-section, except north of Finch, there is no such boundary and the cars go into your areas.
That's correct. And that leaves us with Cummer Avenue as the primary place for people to try and get to a north-south road they could use, or Newton, which runs straight through our community. But there's no other safety valve, so it has to come through our neighborhood. And we're a mature residential neighborhood with lots of kids, lots of seniors, and a huge number of people who are new Canadians who haven't even figured out that they can walk on the sidewalks. So we're a community which is under real pressure there.
So what happens if the city narrows Yonge Street from just north of Finch down to Shepherd, and York Region narrows it from Steeles north? Is it going to help in any way eliminate the cross traffic, the infiltration of traffic that you have into areas just because York Region narrowed their roadway up at Steeles?
Until there are viable alternatives for people to get out of their cars, they're going to drive.
Well, don't they go through the communities now to avoid the Yonge-Steeles intersection?
Yeah, of course they do. And over the last 20 years, there have been various traffic calming measures to try and restrict time of day turning and so on and so on. The problem is, if you carry that to its logical conclusion, then the community can't drive in its own community either, and that's not a viable solution either.
And Yonge Street with no parking on it for seniors, for persons with disabilities, or even for the community, where do you guys go for your restaurants, your stores, your movie theaters, and where do you park?
Yeah, it's a real problem. Right now, there's a lot of parking on private property because the old stock retail that's there was built in the days when people parked in parking lots in front of stores. But as that development is replaced with new vertical buildings with smaller retail spaces, that parking disappears. So you're not going to put it 500 meters away and expect people like my parents who are in their 80s to walk over to Yonge Street to go to one of those businesses. So it's either got to be on the street or you've got to provide green pea parking or underground parking.
That was a comment earlier by one of the deputants. Oh, just park on a side street. Can you get your parents, if they're in a wheelchair or with a walker, from those side streets back out to the restaurants or the movie theaters or the shops in the winter?
It's a problem. I don't have a solution.
Okay, Councillor Mamalady was next.
It's refreshing to hear what you said today, by the way. We heard from Doug Ford earlier that said exactly that you need to deal with.
That's an interesting characterization, but okay.
Well, no, he said that you need to deal with some of the other public transportation modes before you deal with this. Would your concept suggest that some of these subway lines that have been on again, off again, be dealt with to see what it is that we can relieve before we make these kinds of decisions?
Councillor Mamalady, I have been involved in Willowdale municipal affairs virtually all my life. I have seen every proposal come and go. I mean, I got started in the early 80s with the Finch Corridor Light Rapid Transit Plan. Remember that one? An oldie but a goodie. I've been through all of them. The problem is we keep having these partial conversations. And the reality of it is we need to have a grown-up conversation.
Okay, so we close off the middle of the road for bicycles. That's the solution?
No, personally, I think that if you want to have bike paths in Willowdale, and I think that if we can give people a safe place to ride, where they're away from the fumes of all the vehicles that are idling in traffic, I think that's a good model. I think if Beecroft can accommodate that, that's a good idea. But it's only a start. People have to have a way to go east and west as well.
But don't you think that anyone near Beecroft should have a say in this?
Absolutely.
Then why is it that
But Councillor, if I may, my concern, because my neighborhood association is in Ward 24. This isn't a Ward 23 problem. This is a Willowdale problem. And the consultation needs to be broader than showing people some pictures of some trees and a streetscape that doesn't look like anything that's likely ever going to happen.
Okay, Councillor Holiday.
I got another minute.
Oh.
So the staff are showing the pictures and the beautification and how wonderful it's going to look. But I've seen some of these bicycle paths around the world down the middle of the road. They're not as beautiful as the pictures predict.
Yeah, I'm less concerned with the idea that you're going to beautify Willowdale with bike lanes than I am with putting bike lanes someplace where people who actually just want to cycle from their house over to a store on Yonge Street can do so in safety. That's what I want.
Do you think it's worth just waiting another 9 months so that people in the community have a say in this in a democratic way?
Not unless there's a meaningful consultation, but there has to be a broader conversation about the whole community. We can't just say, oh well, let's see what the outcome with Ward 23 is, and then decide what to do. It's time to grow up and recognize that Willowdale is not the way it was when I was a kid. That it's a complicated place with complicated challenges, and we need to consider them holistically.
Should we at least be speaking the languages of the people that have settled in that community?
Yeah. We have to move on to Councillor Hall.
Meetings?
I would
5 seconds.
Yeah, I would not disagree with you about that.
Okay, we have to move on to Councillor Holiday because we're running out of time.
I'll be quick. You brought me some new information today that's really important. You talked about speed enforcement blitzes, speed reductions, turn prohibitions. And I would put to you that those are all the hallmarks of a community's resistance to cut-through traffic. You characterize those as being on the ring roads. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So some members of the community are advocating for the reduction of lanes on Yonge Street. Do you think that they would be prepared to make a pact that they would lift all of those restrictions in order to make that work? Because that's the promise, is that the ring roads would take up the capacity.
I'd be really excited if that would happen. And one of the things that my association's tried to do for a long time is be constructive, right? We've supported things like the Finch corridor intensification. We were very active in the avenues planning. But the problem is, if we just keep armoring individual neighborhoods without addressing the underlying issue, we don't move the whole thing forward. And if we just keep trying to slow everybody down, so the cyclists want to frustrate the drivers want to thwart the cyclists, we don't go anywhere. Any of us.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move to the motion. Again, our apologies to all the people that came out to depute today. There are 10 remaining deputations, but if we don't move these motions by 3:30, we are in trouble procedurally. So the clerk is going to walk us through this because there's a number of motions. I'm not even aware of all of them. I think I'm in the loop on. There's 2 from Councillor Mamalady, 1 from Holiday.
A recorded vote on all the motions.
So we have to move through these quickly. So this one is up first.
So the motion to amend Councillor Robinson's motion.
No, I wanted 2 separate motions, remember, Madam Clerk? I didn't want it all in one motion. I asked you to separate them.
This is the separate one.
Is it? Registration?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, there's a question from Councillor Holiday. How is this different from his motion that he's...
I moved it first.
Your motion. I don't have a motion from you.
I did move it first. I did move it first.
So that's a change, that we're removing the word registered. All those in favor?
Recorded vote on all the motions, please.
Councillor Carmichael Grab, Councillor Holiday, Councillor Mamalady. All those opposed? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Lee, were you voting? All those opposed? Councillor Lee? Councillor...
I think I'm good with it, yeah. I voted in favor of it.
Sorry, I'm going to take another recorded vote. All those in favor of the motion before you. Councillor Carmichael Grab, Councillor Holiday, Councillor Mamalady, Councillor Perruzza. All those opposed? Councillor Robinson, Councillor Lee. That motion carries.
So just for the people that are here, anybody that wants to depute can actually register for the next meeting, right? If this care, if
Yeah, she wants to finish.
Going through it, and then we'll see what...
address that.
So there's another motion before you by Councillor Mamalady. It's that the motion by Councillor Robinson to defer the item be amended to provide that the item be deferred until after the 2018 municipal election.
Recorded vote, please.
On that. All those in favor? Councillor Mamalady. All those opposed? Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Holiday, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Lee, Councillor Perruzza. That motion fails. And we have...
No, mine doesn't apply anymore because the registered speakers has won. Oh, I see, okay. He asked for a recorded vote on every single item. Did you not?
Yes, I did. All those in favor of the deferral with the amendment that carried by Councillor Mamalady to remove the word registered. Councillor Carmichael Greb, Councillor Robinson, Councillor Lee, Councillor Mamalady, Councillor Perruzza. All those opposed? Councillor Holiday?
The registered's out now, so he's okay with that.
As amended.
It's amended by Councillor Mamalady's motion.
You're voting in favor of that? So that carries unanimously. The item is...
So I did have a point of order.
Yes.
To all the people who've sat here all day, that we make it the first, that you make it the first item.
Yeah, absolutely, we can do
all
that.
day again.
Yeah, absolutely. Councillor Holiday.
A point of order. I know that in the discussion, and somehow my motion didn't make it through, there was that question posed about limiting speakers from coming back. And my understanding from the clerk's answer is that in a statutory meeting that's normal, but it's up to the committee to decide. Is it in order to place that motion here now?
Yep.
Because I'm not sure that the committee wants to hear from somebody twice on this matter.
Yep. I think
And if
that's
so, may I do
appropriate.
that? So, yeah, if I may place that motion, and I apologize about the confusion, to not permit the speakers to re-register a second time in the interest of being efficient with the meeting.
Well, you've got 30 seconds to do that.
It's out of order because you've already passed the deferral. This is talking about the next meeting, so it has to be done at the beginning of the next meeting.
Okay, so I've been advised by the clerk it's out of order, your motion, because it's, I'm not sure why, but basically she's saying if we want to do that type of thing, we have to do it at the beginning of the next meeting, at the top of the agenda next meeting.
I intend to do so, so just to be clear on that.
So you can
and limit the speaking time to 3 minutes to be fair, because that's the limitation we placed today to try to complete the agenda.
Yeah, can the clerk just clarify why we can't place it?
You've already moved the deferral motion, so the item has been dealt with. It's been considered. If you want to reopen the deferral just for the purposes of having that motion and then vote again on the deferral, the committee can feel free to do that.
Okay, thank you everyone for your time and great speakers today, all day. Excellent meeting, just too short.
We're adjourned.
We are adjourned.
That's one way to end a week.
That's, I hope Felix never, I hope